What's going on, Bills Mafia? I'm Fernando Schmude, that's your leading the charge. And today I have the pleasure of having with me Matt Parrino from Syracuse.com. Matt, welcome. I'm so happy to have you on the show today, brother. Thank you so much for taking your time joining me today.
Anytime, man. Thanks for having me. It's good to chop it up with you, my friend.
Awesome, awesome. It's always great to have the most Brazilian of Bills beat reporters here joining the show, right? You have a special connection. We already talked about it in the past about the how you always welcome with open arms the Brazilian, some of the Brazilian Bills Mafia guys that go to the US to watch the game sometimes. So we are always thankful for that, and you can be sure when you're finally able to come to Brazil at some point to visit and know our country, you'll be very welcome here, brother.
I can't wait, man. What is this, 2024? I got to get the kids to college, and then I'll come and I'll party hard in Brazil for a weekend or something like that, or a week.
Makes sense. Yeah, it would be awesome. It would be awesome. I know people in America aren't big fans of the games in other countries for obvious reasons. You lose a game at home and the players need to travel, all this kind of stuff. But here in Brazil, people are very excited for the game here in Brazil this year, the first one ever between the Eagles and the Packers, and Bills Mafia obviously will be there representing, and but they can't wait to have the Bills here. I will tell you the truth. I'm not a big fan of watching events outside their natural habitat. Like when I finally watch a Bills game, I want to go to the Highmark or to the new stadium and watch it there. And not like abroad. But I can understand totally people who loves that, and people are really excited to have this game in Brazil here this year. And who knows if at some point the Bills can come here, because we have the info that the Dolphins seems to be the team that holds the rights to have all their gears sold here, or the South America is kind of, especially Brazil, is kind of Miami territory according to the NFL. So who knows if at some point we don't have the Bills playing the Dolphins here. For Bills Mafia here, they would be extremely excited.
Yeah, if the Bills play in Brazil, I feel like that'll be a great way for me to kill two birds with one stone, right? Like I'll make a
Yeah.
week out of it. The London trip was so awesome. Now, did I hear you correctly and say that you're bummed that they're making the new stadium because you want to go to a game at Highmark? Is that what you said?
Yeah, yeah. I'd love to go. I'd love to go to the old stadium first
All right.
instead of going to the new stadium, right?
So
Not sure if I,
when I was younger, I grew up a huge New York Yankees fan, and
uh,
I never been to the stadium. I think I was my late teens, maybe like early 20s, just as they were knocking down the old Yankee Stadium. And
yeah.
my uncle took me and my sister right before like the last season. We went to go to the old Yankee Stadium. Now I've been in the new Yankee Stadium like 5 or 6 times, but that was super cool. So now all you got to do over the next 2 years is make a trip to Buffalo, right? No big deal.
Yeah, yeah. The clock is running out. I gotta get it figured out, brother. And here, Brazil, I already missed one opportunity. Like here, we have the Maracanã Stadium, right? It's our most famous stadium here in Brazil, soccer stadium, but it also went through huge modifications, right? For the World Cup back in 2014, right? And Maracanã was a huge stadium, like 200,000 people could be there. And nowadays, obviously, we have different standards for stadiums, and so after the changes, it we can't have so many people there. It's still huge, but I went to Maracanã, just to the new Maracanã, not to the old one, and that's something that I'd love to be able to experience in the past, but I couldn't do that. And now, hopefully, I don't miss this opportunity with the Highmark Stadium, because for me, it will be always be the Ralph Wilson Stadium, right? For some people, it's the Rich. For other people, it's other names, but for me it's the Ralph Wilson Stadium. So I hopefully can go there at some point, and if in the future go to the new stadium. It would be awesome as well. And for you that are around there to see the stadium being built, it seems to be moving pretty quickly, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I can't believe even over the last 2 weeks. 'Cause I still go down there in the off season, probably like every month, right? Like we're
Mm.
down there for free agency. There's a press conference with Brandon. Then we're down there for the draft. So that's March, then April. Then we're down there for the spring program. So we're down there kind of like every week for like 4 weeks. So I saw how built it was then, but even coming back the 6 weeks after the spring to see the progress now, it's like it's going to be like a stadium
Mhm.
probably in the next 2 or 3 months. It's going to
Mhm.
be crazy. Like people are going to be going to Bills games and like right across the street, they're like, wait, is it? It looks like it's ready. Can we go? Can we go over there? But it's not going to be. It's the same thing that happened in Vegas. I remember when they were building the stadium in Vegas. It looked like it was ready for a whole season, but they were doing a lot of
Uh-huh.
stuff inside.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Sounds great. Sounds great. Bills Mafia is already participating in the chat. Please hit that like button, subscribe to my own Fernando Schmude channel, also to the Rumblings Network. We're back with the Rumblings Network. Thanks to Sarah Larson for figuring out all the stuff and being making it able to happen. And Matt, I will start right off the bat with Diogo's question because that's one that a lot of people we are always like we enter preseason like it doesn't matter, and then if something bad, really bad happens, people gets demolished by it. And if something really good happens, people gets very excited and they forget the early sentence about preseason doesn't matter, right? So
Yeah.
Diogo has here a question about preseason shouldn't be considered much of parameter for what the season will be like, but face it, the first game left a bitter taste. From what you've seen in practice, how far that came from what we'll probably see in week one. So you've been there watching the practices, and obviously we didn't have the starters playing a lot in this first game. But I agree with Jogo that when we have so many people fighting for their roster spots, for the NFL lives, right? You expect them to compete and to do a better job than what they've done against the Bears, right? And so you've been there watching all training camp and preseason as well. How concerning was that performance, especially by those guys that are fighting for their jobs and for depth spots in the team?
I mean, whenever you go out and lose a game like that, like so by so many points, there's an element of concern. But I do think that I was listening to Eric Wood, um, oh no, Steve Tasker on One Bills Live, and this week was the Kelly um, golf tournament, and so all of the old
Mhm.
Bills from the Super Bowl teams were in town, and they were talking about the game and how bad it went, and they remembered back to their Super Bowl years. If you remember, now they went 0-4 in the preseason every single year, because it's not about like the team in preseason; it's about, to your point, the individuals, and so like they're giving these tryouts, these evaluations to all these different players. They're not game planning specifically for a team. Like I thought actually after going back and watching the game, the offense started to really click on that second drive. And then they get to the end of the first quarter, they pull Josh Allen out. And of
Yeah.
course, Mitch Trubisky struggles once they get into the red zone. So, like, I think you have to take that into account. I think you have to take account, okay, Caleb Williams in a regular game, he looked really good for 2 drives, right? The Bills, he went down to the red zone. The Bills defense kind of stood up both times, stopped him. How is he going to handle that in a regular season game? Now, once the Bills defense with a lot of veterans starts to get comfortable, so there's so
Mhm.
many pieces to it. And we're here in Pittsburgh right now. The Bills had a joint practice against the Steelers yesterday.
Mhm.
And man, I saw a couple plays yesterday where I'm like, that's the Bills offense. That's Josh
Mhm.
Allen. Like, that's
Mhm.
still going to be there. Like, I know that there's a lot of concern right now about Matt Milano being out for an extended period of time, and rightfully so. I mean, that was a big piece of what they wanted to do on defense. And there was a lot of excitement around a guy coming back that you're paying $14 million to not have him for an extended period is tough. But this team's going to go as Josh Allen goes. This team is going to go as this offense goes. The Bills are going to find next man up on defense. They're going to be able to plug holes if guys miss on offense. And I think there's a lot to be excited about. Khalil Shakir looks like he is absolutely thriving coming in here to year 3. I think he's going to have a bigger season than anybody really knows. Curtis Samuel didn't play yesterday. He's dealing with a little bit of general soreness, so he's been out. Dalton Kincaid absolutely took over that practice. I think he had 7 or 8 receptions during team drill. So there's so much that you're watching this team, to your point, in the practice setting, and you're saying, okay, I see remnants of what this team has been over the last 4 seasons. And I think I'm still very bullish for what they're going to be because of number 17. Like, you can't take him out of the equation. He's got to be at the forefront of like the conversation when you're talking about expectations.
Mm. Yeah, man. And to a couple of points about what you just talked about, like, first of one, when you go to a preseason game without game planning and obviously not wanting to show your hand too much and just having the players out there competing, feeling the game again, and being prepared for getting prepared for the week 1 and the regular season. Uh, I made an exercise recently writing for Buffalo Rumblings about ranking the Bills players among their NFL peers, right? And when you do this exercise, you see that Josh Allen is right there, top 2 quarterback in the league, top 3, top 4 in the worst case, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you grade the other, when you rank the other players, it's more often than not, you don't have top 10 players like the blue chip players in this roster, at least not yet, right? You have potential, guys with potential. I believe Kincaid can get there. I believe Shakir even can get there, right? But when we rank them individually, we don't have a top-notch roster like with superstar talent outside of Josh Allen. But when you put the game plan in and then playing together as a team, all those things that you mentioned that aren't really the focus on preseason, but they are the focus when the things are for real, like during regular season. You have all those things: game plan, the team, the players playing together as a team, and things like that. I think that's the strength of this Bills team. It's been like this with Josh as the leader, right? And the preseason kind of takes it away from the equation, right?
You kind of broke up at the end there. What did you say?
When you have the players, like in regular season, they are playing together as a team. They have a
Yeah.
game plan. They are executing their game plan and what the coaches are preparing for the opponent. But when you go to preseason, you kind of take away all of that of the equation, and you have they just performing individually, right? And then you go to the backups even. So it's not like there are a lot of superstars in this roster that will take over no matter what. We see it with Josh, but we won't see it with a lot of those guys. They need this game plan, the playing together as a team, playing with their unit to be able to perform at the best. And together they form a great team, not necessarily having an all-star team individually.
No, definitely. And I think that there's the vibe in the building after that game. Like, there wasn't panic or concern. Like, when you talk to players about it, it was almost kind of like, no, that's the preseason. Like, there wasn't there was a lot of factors that kind of went into that. And, when you have a third string quarterback that throws a pick six and the offense, the first team, second team, and third team offense all kind of struggled, like, that's usually the kind of result that you're going to find. I mean, and we don't even know. I mean, Shane Buechele, he's going to be out for a while with that neck injury. We don't know how much pain he was playing through during that game when he suffered the injury. So a lot of factors. I think that, they looked a lot better yesterday in the joint practice. I'll be very interested to see how it looks on Saturday. We still don't know how much, if at all, Josh Allen will play or the starters in general. I mean, you have a situation like Matt Milano happen, and now you start to wonder, okay, here's 5 or 6 players that we can't have get hurt. So maybe let's keep them out of the game. So I wouldn't be surprised if Josh Allen doesn't play on Saturday. As much as I know that Sean McDermott wants to get reps for Allen and all of these new pieces, it's a dangerous game. It's a dangerous balance.
Mm-hmm. True. And the other point was about Matt Milano. People are already getting mad about it, crazy about it. And so Renan is sending his Go Bills. Leo said hi, Parrino. and Guilherme is here talking about Milano, and you already talked a little bit about it, but it's really difficult to replace a guy like Matt Milano. But on the other hand, the Bills played almost the entire season last season without him, and they found a way to be a good defense even without Milano, right? So
Right.
you've been around those guys. I don't know if you remember because from a year ago when you were here as well, and I was really high on Terrell Bernard, and you mentioned how Milano and Edmonds used it to go during practice and to check the several possibilities with they were by themselves, but oh, if they run this side, I will position like this, and in the other situation, they were like kind of preparing for the game alone themselves, the two of them, Edmonds and Milano. And I'd like to ask you, after 1 year, how Bernard has took over this role from Edmonds, because we've been able to see on the field that it really panned out, but in practice, as a leader, as a communicator, because now he won't have Milano as well again, and he will
Right.
need to be that veteran for his maybe the same age as Dorian, but 1 year more in the league. He'll need to be this guy, this veteran, to have Dorian in place. Because if I was high on Bernard for his mental makeup and for being recognized as a film junkie, a guy that always in the right place and studying and being prepared, Dorian is kind of the opposite. It's not like he isn't a student of the game, but that's a guy with huge athletic ability. But he comes from a simplistic scheme in college, and he gotta learn and he gotta get comfortable in the Bills schemes, something that Bernard could translate so quickly. So, how do you see Bernard now playing this role, and the Bills doing their best to replace Matt Milano and what he brings to the table?
So for Bernard, I think that he took over as like the main communicator on the defense last season. I mean, we saw it before we even got to the sixth or seventh game, especially when Matt Milano went out. And like Tyrell Dotson was a little bit more of a veteran. He's a smart player. But I think that the way that he so seamlessly fit in after Milano went out, I think some of the credit has to go to Bernard and the way that, he took that step in his communication process. Bernard's going to be huge for whoever ends up playing at that will linebacker spot. And obviously right now, all signs point to Dorian Williams being the guy that can do it. And, I think if you're the Bills or a fan, you're excited from this perspective. You're not excited that Matt Milano is not playing. I think that's you're putting that in a separate box, right, of emotion, because that sucks. I mean, you're paying a lot of money to the guy. He's a fan favorite. The way that he plays is so important to the team. But like, if you could push all that aside for a second, Dorian Williams is a second-year, third-round draft pick. They drafted him for a reason. He plays so fast. What I think he really needs at that spot is what Matt Milano had in 2017 and 2018, playing time, reps, right? Like Matt Milano got a chance to start pretty much from the jump. Now, if I remember, that was the year before I started. So in 2017, I think he was battling still with somebody else. He didn't really start.
He was rotating with Raymond Humber.
There you go. There you go. And then he became the full-time starter in 2018 and kind of went to the moon. And I know there were still some growing pains along the way. And maybe that'll be what happens with Dorian Williams. Maybe you'll see flashes at times. You'll still see some moments where he needs to, that position when you're playing in a primarily nickel defense. It's nothing I've ever talked to Bobby Babich about or Matt Milano about, but I'd be interested to hear their thoughts on it. Maybe that's something for a story later. How much more is on the plate of a weak side linebacker when you're playing in a nickel defense? Because there's so many other responsibilities for a slot cornerback, right? Like, of course, you got to defend the wide receiver, but in a lot of times you got to defend the box, and you got to be how much more is on the plate of the weak side linebacker to carry the brunt of a lot of that load. And Matt Milano's done it so seamlessly for so many years. That's a lot to put on the plate of Dorian Williams. But the more he plays, I think the more he'll be able to show you what he can do and fly around. I think the biggest key for whoever plays that spot is like being able to stay healthy, because down the stretch last year, Tyrell Dotson got hurt. Williams got hurt in a game, I think. Obviously, Matt Milano missed most of the season. Bernard, even at the middle linebacker spot, didn't play in the Chiefs game. So, like, how can you keep these guys healthy all year long so you can have some continuity and that playmaking ability in January?
True, so true, Matt. And even with the depth guys like Spector, he's looked good in his few appearances, but he's struggled so much to stay healthy, right? And now again he's right there with an opportunity maybe to be the next man up, and unfortunately he's dealing with a calf injury again. And then you have the rookie Ulofoshio, and you have some veterans like Dion Jones, who I really had him as one of the top linebackers in the league when he was with the Falcons, and obviously times uh, flies for everybody, right? So unfortunately, that's not the Dion Jones we have around right now. But I would like to hear from you. Uh, what can we expect like for a guy from a guy like Dion Jones? Because just like I said, he was a key cog on that Falcons defense that went to the Super Bowl. He was a top linebacker in top linebacker conversation for a couple of years there. And now, can he at least be for example, an upgrade for what AJ Klein was, like that veteran presence that you can trust coming to the field and not messing up, being in the right places, doing the right plays, and playing that savvy veteran role?
Yeah, I definitely think he can. I mean, at 29 years old, he's kind of a younger version of that, right? Like than AJ Klein was last year. And I think that there's been some good moments. I mean, in coverage, you go back to, when he was really good. 2018 was his last season. I think he got an 80 PFF grade in terms of coverage and 90 overall defensive grade. I mean, that was the prime of his career, right? He played one more year in Atlanta, then a year in Carolina. He's coming over to Buffalo, and he's fighting for one of those depth spots. I mean, I think guys like Ulofoshio, Dorian Williams, even Balin Spector probably slot above him at this stage. He's still learning the defense. I don't know how much different the defense is than the ones that he's played in the last couple of years. That can always be a challenge, right? But in terms of like ability in the league, where he's been, what he's done, he's a huge asset to have in the room. Now, the one thing I have to learn a little bit more about him, because the coaches haven't talked a ton about him. Throughout most of training camp, he was running with the third team, sometimes the second team, which is obvious. I mean, Milano and Bernard were out there for most of the time on the first team. Can he play both spots? Because when he was brought in, it was mostly as kind of like a backup middle linebacker type of profile. Morrow was more of that weak side guy who could play middle too. He played middle last year. So they usually target guys that have that versatility. But that's going to be the piece of it. He's had good moments throughout the summer. He's had some moments where you're like, yeah, you'd probably like to have a little bit more in that situation. But I think a lot of it's just getting used to everything. And I think having the cupboard stocked with a little bit more options this year at linebacker was something that Bean was very urgent about this offseason. And now we're sitting here and there's plenty more depth there at the position.
Great. Yeah, and for me, Matt, the second step to replace Matt Milano, like, because I've talked to people in my own subscribers group, and I talk like Dorian doesn't need to be really a Matt Milano replacement. He kind of needs to be a Tyrell Dodson replacement. Dodson did a great job last season, and it was a big reason why we still a good defense without Milano. Dodson doing his job on early downs, especially. And when you had clear passing downs, you could move to some dime packages and add a safety to the lineup. Bring Poyer down to the box where he was playing better already.
That was great last year, Fernando, but they don't have any safeties.
Yeah,
all their safeties are hurt.
That's the problem now, right? Because it sounds
it's
good,
crazy.
But
the safety situation is about as wild
as
as I've seen it. Like, I mean, we're looking out there at practice, and DeMar Hamlin left practice halfway through with what he called like a minor thing. But with him out, Bishop out, Edwards out, you're looking out there, and man, the safety situation is just brutal right now. That, that could be the most like troubling position right now in terms of outlook for the regular season. We'll see if Edwards and Bishop can start practicing next week. But man, that's been rough.
Yeah, man, because just like you said, we're having problems to fill the two top spots already. Imagine to have a third one to play, right? And that would be my question. Like they brought in guys like with some experience, one with a lot of experience in Kareem Jackson, and I was like I didn't see him a lot in the first game, and that's a guy with plenty of experience starting for good defenses, right? He was a former first round pick, and he played recently. He started for the Broncos, and last season he got injured, but he played 10 games all as a starter as well. That's a guy I was expecting to see something from, and even to obviously there is a learning curve and to learn the defense and all, but with all his experience, a guy that I expected to, hey, with all those opportunities, this guy might surprise some people and become a enter the conversation to start with all his experience and all his resume. I'd like to ask you about Jackson and then Burgess, who came from also played for the Rams and former third round pick, and our own guys. Just like you said, Hamlin has been making plays all off season, but Ken Lewis is a guy that I feel is kind of underrated by Bills Mafia, maybe because of that JJ catch over his head that
Mm-hmm.
everybody got mad at him. But I feel like he played well at safety when he got some opportunities there. How do you see those guys stepping up and the possibilities? Because Edwards has been injured all his Bills tenure so far, and then Bishop out as well. We need him back as quick as possible. How those other guys can fill in and maybe become options, even in this kind of situation in regular season, when we expect to have our main duo as starting safeties, but to have a third one being able to step in and play that dime package.
Yeah, I think first of all, what you said there was really important. I do think that Cam Lewis kind of gets overlooked as an option because I think people that left a poor taste in their mouths. Obviously, like that was a huge moment in that game, and he hasn't played a ton of consistent games over the course of his career. But there's a reason they've kept him around. There's a reason that he continues to kind of work at safety and at slot cornerback, and I think in a pinch can even play some boundary corner for you if you needed him to be. He's going to be an important piece here moving forward. Like, he's somebody that can give you versatility to play. They like Daquan Hardy a lot, right? But like if Taron Johnson misses any time at any point this year, that's a huge spot for a rookie cornerback to go into, knowing all that Taron Johnson does for this team. To have
Yeah.
a guy like Cam Lewis who's done it before, that's really nice. And we could be looking at Cam Lewis starting on Saturday if DeMar Hamlin's not available, or maybe they don't want to play Taylor Rapp because they don't want to chance him getting hurt and adding to the problem there at safety right now.
Mhm.
Jackson and Burgess, listen, I think there was a reason both those guys were available when they were available. I think
Mhm.
Kareem Jackson is getting older.
Mhm.
You kind of saw a little bit of a decline in his play. I just think the speed, the reaction time at his age. He reminds me a lot of the Captain Munnerlyn signing a couple years ago, a guy
Okay.
that, at that age still has the desire to play and the heart and all that kind of stuff, but maybe not the skills. We'll see. Like tomorrow is actually going to be a really big day for those two guys. And,
Mhm.
Burgess is a guy that, went to a Super Bowl a couple years ago, and I'm sure familiar with Von Miller and Taylor Rapp from his time
Mhm.
with the Rams, but he's struggled to kind of move up the depth chart here, even with all of the opportunity. So that's when
Mhm.
kind of my eyes open up wide. Like, is this somebody that, maybe might be a practice squad kind of player? There's a reason he was available when he was available. So nothing's really stood out to me about either of them. Burgess made a nice interception at one point during practice, but they're in a situation where there's tons of opportunity because guys can't really get back onto the field.
Mhm. Bills Mafia, hit that like button, subscribe to the Rumblings Network and to my own Fernando Schmude channel. Rumblings Network is back with Bruce Nolan, also with his show and the Chop Up, and all guys all the band is back together at Rumblings Network. So support us, subscribe, and hit that like button. Uh, Matt, the cornerback group was always considered thin, right? But we have now what seems like I really enjoy. I really like our starters with Douglas and Benford. I think those guys are also like overlooked when we look at the entire league, right? And especially Benford. Benford is one of those guys that I always tell Bills Mafia, like, we before national media realized our guys are good. We 1 year or 2 years later, earlier, we noticed that, like, it was like this with Milano. It took like a couple of years for the national media to realize he was really good, and we already knew it. Like Poyer, same thing. Like Micah Hyde became an All-Pro in his first year with the Bills, but we already knew Poyer was playing at the very same level, and then he got the recognition a couple of years later. And I feel like Terrell Bernard, it's happening with Terrell Bernard now. Like we already know he's pretty good, but PFF doesn't like him much, and so people don't realize how good this guy is until he has one or two more seasons like the last one. And Benford kind of fits in this model as well, because I feel like he's really solid, trending upwards, and becoming a really solid starting cornerback in this league. Douglas is a playmaker, we know. But then the other two guys also played really well against the Bears. It's something that people only focus on the scoreboard, and sometimes they miss the individual players making plays, playing well. Kyle Elam showing great signs, and even Ingram also playing really some quality snaps against the Bears. How confident are you in this corner room? Bro even asked him, right, how confident you are with this cornerback room and the situation with the corners going to the regular season.
I gotta say, it's probably one of the position groups that I'm the most confident about sitting here today. Because to your point, Rasul Douglas came over and didn't even really know the defense and showed you what he can do, picking off 4 balls at the end there. Obviously dealt with a little bit of, injury at one point, but I thought the performance overall last season was tremendous. And you have a burgeoning superstar. I'm not even trying to be hyperbolic. I think Christian Benford could be one of the top cornerbacks in the NFL. I think we're going to be talking about him at the end of the season as like a major offseason extension candidate. And the thing for him is just staying healthy. Like that's something that he's kind of, I think we could say this for everybody. It's been kind of a theme of the podcast today, but those are 2 really good players. I think that's where you want to start. And you have a hungry, like a starving Kyrie Elam who's trying to get into this defense any way that he can and try to make some plays. And maybe if you're Sean McDermott, you could be creative with that. And you can maybe rotate him in for a little bit and try to keep a guy like Christian Benford healthy. I don't know the approach that they're going to end up taking. I'm huge on Jamarcus Ingram. I try not to talk too much about him because he's a UB product, and I am a UB graduate, and I always have a soft spot for all those guys. But he's a really good player. He's super. This is something I've talked about and written about all summer long. He is physical and competitive at the line of scrimmage, more so than most cornerbacks that I've ever seen for the Bills. Like, and not that they haven't been willing to be like aggressive, especially in press, like when they're at the line of scrimmage, but he makes wide receivers feel him at the line of scrimmage. And I love that about him, how much he, sometimes physical cornerbacks can lead to penalties and stuff like that. You don't see that a lot from Ingram. He's a really smart player. And I think if he's given a kind of a larger opportunity here in year 3 for him, they're excited about what he can be. And then, don't look now, but Daquan Hardy can play a little bit on the outside. I know he's slotted as a nickel cornerback, and rightfully so. He's really good inside, but in a pinch, he can play on the outside too. So I really love this cornerback group. I think they have a lot of guys that, aren't talked about it nearly enough. And I think that they kind of like it that way. They play like with the chip on their shoulder, especially Christian Benford. Should have seen him going at Pat Fryermuth in one-on-ones yesterday. It was a sight to behold. So I think they're charged up. I think they're ready to go. I think that secondary, if the Bills' defensive front can generate some consistent pressure, this defense is still going to be really good.
And let me ask you one question, like playing the devil's advocate here, because last season, Boogie Basham finally was looking decent and good during preseason and looking physically ready and fast and quick, and then the Bills decided to trade him and move on from him, right? And with Jamarcus Ingram playing so well, and with Hardy now starting to make some noise, I don't know about the other young guys below them in the depth chart. But do you see any possibility for the Bills like trying to sell Elon high on at the end of this preseason, or do you think like no, Benford has got injured every season. Douglas is also not get any younger. We gotta be prepared, but that's something that I've kept in the back of my mind. Like the Bills wouldn't try to move on from Khair since he's getting closer to having to negotiate a new deal and maybe add a veteran and go with Ingram, go with Hardy, go with other guys. Do you think it's a possibility or no? He's playing so well to the level that the Bills will try to keep him and maybe have him set to take over maybe in Rasul Douglas' spot from in a year from now or two, a couple of years.
Yeah, I get what you're talking about, and I'm never going to sit here and say that would never happen, only because if somebody came calling and offered a second round pick and needed a cornerback, who knows? Like maybe Brandon Beane would be like, interesting. I still don't see it happening though, because you mentioned it. Like Benford's gotten hurt for extended time every season he's been in the NFL. They love Jamarcus Ingram, but to put him in that spot as the third cornerback, I mean, that would be the most inexperienced crew of depth cornerbacks they've ever had under Sean McDermott. And I think that they've invested so much into Khair Elam this offseason alone. I mean, moving on from John Butler, who Khair Elam didn't really get along with, bringing in Jamil Adai, who is from the area where he played college ball and very ultra familiar with Khair Elam, has been really one of his main objectives. It's felt like just watching them out on the practice field is really lifting up Khair Elam and like coaching him up hard, but also just being in his hip pocket and really like helping him to tap into all of that potential. So I think that like they've spent all this time waiting on him and he might be on the precipice of really taking off. I just don't see them moving on from it. And it's a situation like if they were in a situation where they needed a ton of draft capital because they were kind of hamstrung there, they have a ton of draft picks next year. They have a ton of good
and that Vikings pick is looking better and better.
Really,
right?
really good. I mean, they could really probably get up into the first round. Like they could probably get up pretty high in the first round by trading a couple of those picks next year to go out and get like a really good player, or sit and pick and get 3 guys potentially in the top 45. That could be a huge kind of opportunity for Brandon Beane. So no, I just don't see it. And I think in a perfect world, right? Like you have Khair Elam and Christian Benford as your cornerbacks of the future. And I don't know, like if Elam comes in and has a huge season and Benford has a huge season and now you got to pay both of them, that could be a problem, right? So maybe you got to think about that a little bit. It's always like this revolving door of options when you're an NFL general manager and thinking about things down the road. But I do think that they want to see what it looks like from Elam.
Awesome, man. A couple of ones, so I can let you do your job, and you're still in Pittsburgh, so don't want to take too much of your time, right? Bro was speaking about defense, talking about defense here, right? And talking about Babbage and McDermott, and I will use this question to get a little bit deeper about it, right? A lot of changes in the coaching staff, and you've been around Leslie Frazier, you've been around Brian Dable, and then Dorsey, and now with Babbage and Brady, and I get it. A lot of people talking about how vocal they are and energetic and stuff. We always hope the changes are for the better, but we can't really also diminish what all those veteran other guys did in their careers as well, and their contributions for the Bills to be where they are right now. Like Frazier was huge. I'm pretty certain he was huge for McDermott as a rookie head coach to have a guy with experience like Frazier alongside him in the early years, right? And then Dable obviously maybe had this offense at its peak during that perfect game against the Patriots, and then the 13 seconds game. How do you feel with those young guys now stepping up and Brady as a guy that a lot of people see as the next big thing at the offensive coordinator, maybe a head coach candidate in the future, if he can keep it up with this offense? And then Babbage, who even got some opportunity to to call the plays in this game. It was a preseason game. It's hard to evaluate. There is no game plan, no special stuff being prepared for the opponents. But how do you see those guys now as the guys in their coordinator spots? And do you see McDermott really giving Babbage the opportunity to call the plays in regular season?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. I think that everything so far from the Bills has been positive about Babbage and in his debut of calling plays. But, when they get to the regular season, there was so much success last year with how Sean McDermott did it. It wouldn't surprise me if he did it to start at least, or maybe gave, Bobby some quarters where he can kind of do it. I don't know how it will end up working. And they still aren't really coming forward with the actual plan, but I think Bobby is great. I think he brings an energy that you think about last year when Joe Brady took over from Ken Dorsey. That's the big thing that everybody's saying, like the change in the energy. And I think having Bobby infused in all the position rooms, that's huge. And I'm pretty bullish on him. And I think Brady, with a whole offseason to plan his offense, I think that the league probably, we haven't talked enough about the league maybe being under what's the word? I think underprepared for what the Bills offense is going to be this year, because there's going to be some concept changes. There's going to be, I think they're going to be a much more difficult team to deal with in terms of the play action, some of the stuff that they do with their motion. I think the motion is going to be a bigger part of what they try to do. Stuff that he couldn't really implement last year, just taking over halfway through the season. So I like the direction that they're going. I think that they have two guys that maybe you can have a little runway with. I think both guys could potentially be head coaches if everything goes according to plan. And that's the tough world you live in as Sean McDermott with a franchise quarterback, that, every couple of years, if your offense is what it is, you're going to lose the guy that has helped make it that way. So that's the tough part about it. But for this year, I like a lot of what we've seen. I think the guys really respond to both guys. And I do agree with you too, that Frazier was necessary for the early part of his career. But I think now Sean has such a good handle on it, and probably has such confidence from the fact that he was able to head coach a team to an AFC East championship, also while being the defensive coordinator and having the success that they had. And honestly, the only team that had a real shot to beat the Chiefs were the Bills last year. I mean, they were a field goal away, or maybe a possession away. So I think that they still like a lot of what they are and who they are. And I like the coordinators.
Yeah, awesome. To close it out, Matt, Pittsburgh game just around the corner. They had the joint practice yesterday. With all that you've been able to watching first hand there, and now the game just around the corner, what is Matt Parrino looking for in this game against Pittsburgh? What are the places or the players, the guys that you are going to this game like, oh, I want some answers. I want to see some stuff from those guys in our positional groups against the Steelers Saturday.
I'd be interested to see if we see Von Miller play. If he does, I'd like to. I kind of like to see what that would look like. I mean, could you imagine the headlines on Sunday morning if Von Miller sacks Russell Wilson or Justin Fields? And I think Bills fans are going to get pretty excited about something like that.
Yeah.
I want to see, and listen, Sean even said it. Von has never really played in the preseason, so maybe he doesn't play at all and saves it for the regular season. I don't know. Dorian Williams obviously is at the top of my list in terms of who I'm looking at. Tyler Bass, man, it's been kind of an up and down, shaky time for him over the last couple of weeks in the practice setting. I know he made both field goals last week, but I'm watching him. On the offensive side of the ball, Alec Anderson had 2 fumbled snaps to Mitch Trubisky in practice yesterday, and he's right now slated to be their backup center. So I'll be watching him quite a bit. And then Marquez Valdes-Scantling, man, is he a roller coaster ride, man? Up and down, up and down. He's got some good moments, some moments where you're like, yikes, with the drops. So if he gets the chance to play 20, 30 snaps again, I'm going to be kind of zeroed in on him and watching him.
Awesome. Yeah, interesting about Anderson, because Vampran Granger was a standout in the first game, right? And he's looking really good. So Anderson gotta look out for his backup center spot. Matt, thank you so much, brother, for joining us today. Brazilian Bills Mafia loves you, as I said, as I told you before, right? So you're always welcome here in Brazil. When you come, you will be welcome with open arms. Be sure about that, because just like I told you, like the most Brazilian Bills beat reporter. So we love you down here, and we are always following your work, and keep it up, brother. You're doing a great job, and we love you here in Brazil.
Thank you so much, Fernando. I really appreciate you having me on, brother.
Thank you, Bills Mafia. Hit that like button, subscribe to Rumblings Network channel, and support us. We are back in the fold trying to produce quality content for all Bills Mafia all over the world. So I really appreciate you taking your time. I'll be back on Sunday with the lead in the charge in Portuguese, talking about Bills and Steelers, the post game reaction and analysis. So you're always welcome to join me on Sunday as well in Portuguese. American people, you need to hit that caption button so they can understand some stuff later, but not live, right? But it's still good, all right? So thank you so much. See you around, and go Bills.